Good morning, dear friends. Before we step into the flow of this new day, take a slow breath and let your soul become still. Wherever you are listening from, I invite you to enter this moment with openness, because what you are about to hear is not just a story, but a reflection of the quiet ways God guides those who hesitate, those who doubt, and those who hold gifts they're afraid to use. Today, as we begin together, let your heart soften. Let your spirit breathe. And let this story speak to the places inside you that long to trust again. There once lived a young man named Gabriel, a quiet soul who carried more potential in his heart than he dared to acknowledge. He was thoughtful, gentle, and observant, someone who noticed subtleties others often missed: the weary smile of a stranger, the shift in the seasons, the sound of morning light filtering through leaves. Yet despite these gifts, Gabriel often felt small, as though everything he carried was too fragile to offer the world. He worked modestly, lived simply, and rarely spoke of the dreams that stirred beneath the surface of his cautious life. Every morning he walked the same path to his small workshop, passing familiar trees, quiet houses, and a stone church that stood silently at the corner of the street. And every morning he whispered a prayer he barely understood. "Lord, let me be useful today, if you still want me to be." It wasn't that Gabriel didn't want to do good. It was that he feared doing it wrong. He feared failing. He feared that what God had entrusted to him, his kindness, his insight, his creativity, would not be enough. One particular morning, the air was cool with a hint of November's chill, and Gabriel felt an unusual heaviness in his chest. He had woken before dawn from a dream he couldn't quite remember. All he retained was the feeling of something slipping through his hands, something precious he was supposed to hold tightly but failed to keep. The sensation lingered with him as he walked, making each step feel weighted with purpose he couldn't name. When he reached the church, the old wooden door was slightly ajar. He paused. He had walked past this place countless times, always meaning to stop in, always intending to pray within its quiet walls, yet somehow never doing so. Today, however, something nudged him inward. Not a voice, not a push, just a gentle pull, like a thought rising from his spirit rather than his mind. He placed his hand on the door and slowly pushed it open. Inside, the early light filtered through stained glass windows, scattering colors across empty pews. The stillness felt alive, not empty, but filled with a quiet presence that settled over him like a warm cloak. Gabriel slipped into a pew near the back and bowed his head. He didn't know what he was expected to say, so he let the silence speak first. He breathed slowly, letting his heart catch up with his body. After several minutes, he heard the soft shuffle of footsteps. Lifting his head, he noticed an elderly priest placing candles near the altar. The man's movements were slow yet strong, deliberate yet gentle, as though everything he touched mattered. When their eyes met, the priest offered a small, warm smile and nodded before returning to his task. It was a simple gesture, but it steadied Gabriel's heart. Sitting there in the hush of the sanctuary, Gabriel began to speak silently to God, not with eloquent prayers, but with honest thoughts. He confessed his fears, his reluctance, his uncertainty about the gifts he carried. He admitted that he often felt like the servant in the parable who buried the coin instead of using it, afraid of disappointing the master. He wanted to trust, but trust felt heavy, like stepping into deep water. He wanted to do good, but good felt fragile in his hands. As he prayed, something gentle stirred within him. Not a revelation, not a dramatic shift, just a soft awareness. He sensed that God wasn't asking him to be fearless, only faithful, not perfect, only willing. The gifts God had placed in his hands weren't given to overwhelm him, but to bless the world through him. They weren't meant to be hidden out of fear, but shared out of love. After a long moment, Gabriel rose, feeling lighter than he had when he'd entered. He wasn't suddenly confident. He wasn't suddenly bold, but he felt a quiet resolve settling in his soul, like seeds planted beneath the soil, small now, but with the promise of growth if he tended them. When he stepped outside, the morning had fully awakened. A soft breeze carried fallen leaves across the street, and the sunlight broke through the branches of the tall oaks lining the road. Everything looked the same, yet Gabriel felt different. His steps carried a sense of purpose, though he couldn't yet name it. On his way to the workshop, he passed an elderly woman struggling with her bags at the corner market. Normally, Gabriel would hesitate, uncertain whether she wanted help, afraid of imposing, afraid of doing the wrong thing. But today, something in him nudged gently. He stepped closer and asked if he could help. The woman looked up with grateful eyes and nodded. As he carried her bags to her small apartment nearby, they spoke gently about life, about faith, about the simple goodness of small acts. When he left her doorstep, Gabriel felt a flicker of joy, small but unmistakable. It wasn't the act itself that moved him, but the realization that offering himself wasn't as heavy as he feared. Sometimes all God needed was willingness, not perfection. At the workshop, Gabriel approached his task with renewed steadiness. He took extra care in crafting the wooden figures he carved, small tokens he made for families, children, and travelers who passed through town. As he carved, he felt an unusual clarity, as though each motion carried more intention than before. His hands felt guided, not by skill alone, but by purpose. By early afternoon, Gabriel had finished a piece he hadn't meant to make, a small carving of a lantern with a flame inside it. He didn't know why he made it, but the moment he held it in his hands, a wave of recognition washed over him. It felt like a symbol of something rising in his soul, a reminder that what God places within us isn't meant to stay hidden. It is meant to shine. Later that day, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the ground, Gabriel returned home. He placed the small lantern carving on his table and stared at it for a long time. He knew this day had marked something in him, not a dramatic turning point, but a quiet beginning, a seed planted, a spark lit. As he prepared for bed, he whispered again the prayer he had spoken earlier. Lord, let me be useful, if you still want me to be. But tonight the words carried a different weight, not of fear, but of trust. He felt God's presence near, not demanding, not pushing, just inviting him to walk forward with courage. And as Gabriel drifted to sleep, he sensed that tomorrow would bring something new, perhaps small, perhaps simple, but meaningful. Because when a heart begins to trust, even a little, God has room to move in ways we never expect. The next morning arrived with a soft gray sky, the kind that made the world feel quieter than usual. Gabriel awoke slowly, lingering in that gentle space between dreaming and waking, feeling the same quiet stirring he had felt the day before. It wasn't loud or forceful, it was subtle, like a whisper reminding him that something within him had begun to shift. As he sat at the edge of his bed, he found himself looking toward the small wooden lantern he had carved and left on the table. The faint morning light touched it, revealing the delicate patterns he had carved into the wood. He picked it up and held it in his hands, letting his fingers trace the smooth surface. He didn't know exactly why the piece seemed important, but something about it made him feel steadier, as though it carried a truth he was only beginning to understand. He prepared for the day slowly, savoring each simple movement, the washing of his face, the tying of his shoes, the closing of the small window beside his table. Everything felt more intentional now, as if each action was an opportunity to choose trust over hesitation. Before leaving home, he paused at the door and whispered a brief prayer. Not out of fear, but out of peace. Lord, guide me today. It was simple, but it felt sincere. The streets were quiet as he walked, the light still soft from the early hour. When he passed the church, he felt a familiar pull to step inside, though he didn't enter this time. Instead, he paused at the steps, letting the calmness of the place wash over him. The doors were closed, but the memory of yesterday's stillness filled him with a sense of grounding. He bowed his head briefly, then continued on. At the workshop, Gabriel found that his hands carried a new steadiness. He began his work with quiet focus, shaping wood into small figures, smoothing rough edges, and carving gentle lines. But today there was something else on his mind, something he couldn't quite shake. The dream he had forgotten the previous day had returned to him in pieces during the night. He remembered standing in a field of dry grass, holding something small but bright in his hand. He remembered feeling torn between hiding it and holding it up toward the sky. And he remembered a sense of urgency, as though choosing to hide the light would somehow cause it to dim forever. Throughout the morning, he reflected on this dream, unsure what it meant but sensing that it echoed his inner struggle. He had always been cautious with his gifts, guarding them rather than offering them freely. But the dream made him wonder what might happen if he allowed his light, his kindness, his creativity, his quiet wisdom to be seen. As he carved, the shop bell chimed softly, signaling someone had entered. Gabriel looked up to see a young woman stepping inside. She appeared uncertain, her eyes scanning the shelves of carved wooden figures, as though searching for something specific. Gabriel greeted her gently, asking if she needed help. She hesitated before speaking, her voice soft and a little shaky. "I'm looking for something meaningful," she said. "Something that brings comfort. My mother passed away last week, and Her voice trembled, and she stopped, pressing her hand lightly against her chest. Gabriel felt a wave of compassion rise in him. He didn't know the woman, but the sorrow in her eyes felt familiar, as though he had seen that kind of grief before, in others who tried to stand strong despite the weight they carried. He stepped closer, speaking gently so she wouldn't feel rushed. "I'm very sorry for your loss," he said. Maybe something will speak to you here. You're welcome to take your time." She nodded, her eyes drifting slowly from one shelf to the next. Gabriel watched quietly, giving her space. Yet something inside him stirred, a gentle nudge, the same kind he had felt the day before when he helped the elderly woman. His gaze shifted to the small wooden lantern he had carved. It still sat near his workspace, its polished edges reflecting a faint glimmer of light. Before he could think too much, he picked it up and approached the young woman. "This one, I didn't make it for anyone in particular," he said softly, "but maybe it might bring a bit of comfort." She looked at the lantern, her expression softening as she reached out and took it carefully into her hands. She traced the carved flame with her fingertip, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It feels warm, like hope." Gabriel wasn't sure what to say, but he felt something settle within him. A quiet confirmation that offering his work, his gift, might truly touch others in ways he couldn't anticipate. The young woman held the lantern close to her chest as though embracing it. After a moment, she looked up at him with gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "This means more than you know." He nodded gently, watching as she paid for the lantern and left the shop with careful steps. When the door closed behind her, Gabriel stood still, his heart filled with an unexpected mixture of gratitude and awe. He had never considered that something he created with his hands could ease another person's sorrow. He had never seen his gift as something that could bring healing, but today he had witnessed it. As the afternoon unfolded, Gabriel continued his work, but something deep within him was changing. The fear that had once made him hesitate began to lose strength. Every act of kindness, every choice to step forward rather than shrink back, was slowly rewriting the way he understood himself. He realized that using his gifts wasn't about being impressive or perfect. It was about being willing to help where he could, in the small ways God opened before him. Later in the day, he took a short walk through the nearby market. The air carried the scent of warm bread and fresh herbs, and the sound of shopkeepers calling out to customers created a pleasant hum of life. As Gabriel wandered, he noticed a boy sitting alone at the edge of the square, carving clumsily at a small block of wood with a dull knife. The boy looked frustrated, his brows furrowed deeply. Gabriel approached slowly and asked if the boy needed help. The boy shrugged. "I'm trying to make a little bird," he muttered, "but it keeps looking wrong." Gabriel knelt beside him and examined the wooden block. He gently offered a few suggestions, sharpening the angle here, smoothing the edges there. The boy's eyes brightened as he listened. Gabriel didn't take the carving from him. He simply guided him, letting the boy discover each adjustment himself. After a few minutes, the shape began to resemble a bird more clearly. The boy looked at it with pride. "Thank you," he said, a sudden smile breaking across his face. Gabriel returned the smile, feeling a warmth rising in his chest again. These moments, small, unplanned, quiet, felt like threads God was weaving together, showing him that his light wasn't meant to stay hidden. He didn't need to perform miracles. He didn't need to be extraordinary. He simply needed to be present, attentive, willing. When he finally returned home that evening, Gabriel felt tired but deeply at peace. He placed his tools aside, washed his hands, and sat at his table with a candle burning beside him. As the flame flickered softly, he reflected on the day. The grieving woman, the young boy, the gentle nudges he had followed. Each moment felt like a step forward on a path he hadn't realized he was walking. He whispered a quiet prayer. "Lord, thank you for trusting me with small things. Help me continue even when I'm unsure." And in the stillness of his room, he sensed again the presence he had felt in the church. A steady, patient love guiding him one day at a time. The seeds planted in him were beginning to grow, not through sudden transformation, but through the daily choice to trust. The following days unfolded with a quiet rhythm, each one carrying Gabriel a little farther along the path he had unknowingly stepped onto. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden revelations or miraculous signs. Yet every day felt different from the last. It was as if the world itself had begun leaning gently toward him, inviting him to respond with trust instead of fear. The small acts he had once hesitated to offer became more natural, and the people he encountered seemed to appear as though guided by a hand greater than his own. Still, Gabriel struggled with moments of doubt. Though he was growing more open, more willing to use his gifts, there were times when an old voice whispered in the back of his mind, telling him he wasn't enough, that he would eventually fail, that his small acts were too insignificant to matter. Those moments often came early in the morning, before the world fully woke, when the quiet outside matched the trembling uncertainty inside him. Yet each time he found himself returning to prayer. Not long, elaborate words, but simple, honest ones. "Lord, help me trust you. Help me trust what you've placed in me." One evening after closing the workshop, Gabriel decided to take a walk through the fields beyond town. He hadn't visited them in a long time, but something about the setting sun called him there, painting the horizon with a soft glow. The fields stretched far and wide, filled with tall grasses swaying in the cool wind. As he walked deeper into the open space, a sense of spaciousness filled his soul, as though the field mirrored the room God was creating within him, the room to grow, to breathe, to become. He sat down on a flat stone near a cluster of wildflowers, watching the sky shift from gold to a dusky lavender. His thoughts drifted to the dream that had returned to him again the previous night, the one where he stood in a dry field holding a small but bright light. This time he remembered more. He remembered feeling that the light did not belong to him alone. He remembered hearing a faint voice, not speaking words but stirring a feeling. "Do not hide what I have placed in you." Gabriel closed his eyes, letting the cool air brush against his face. The subtle message resonated deeply, but it also unsettled him. Using his gifts in small ways had been one thing, but revealing them more fully, offering them openly, that felt far scarier. What if he did it wrong? What if people misunderstood? What if he disappointed God instead of honoring him? The old fear pressed gently at the edges of his heart. As he sat there wrestling with his thoughts, the sound of footsteps approached from behind. Gabriel turned to see the elderly priest from the church walking slowly along the path. The priest noticed him and greeted him with the same warm smile Gabriel had seen the first day they met. He moved with the calmness of someone who had carried many years of faith, many burdens, and many joys. "You chose a peaceful place to rest," the priest said gently. Gabriel smiled. "I needed some quiet." The priest nodded and sat beside him, folding his hands in his lap. Together, they watched the sky continue to fade into deeper shades of blue. After a moment, the priest spoke again, his voice soft and reflective. "Sometime," he said, "God brings us to quiet places so we can hear what we keep ignoring in the noise." Gabriel felt his breath catch slightly. He wondered whether the priest somehow knew what he was wrestling with, though he said nothing. Instead, he stared at the horizon and allowed the man's words to settle. "You carry something in your heart," the priest continued, "something God entrusted to you. I see it in the way you move, the way you listen, the way you look at the world with gentleness. But you've kept it hidden for a long time, haven't you?" Gabriel swallowed hard, surprised at how accurately the priest recognized him. I suppose I have," he admitted. "Why?" the priest asked, not with judgment, but with sincere curiosity. Gabriel hesitated before answering. "Because I'm afraid," he said honestly. "Afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough, afraid of misusing what God gave me." The priest nodded thoughtfully. "Fear can disguise itself as humility," he said. "It tells us we are unworthy, too small, too unskilled. But humility doesn't hide what God gives. Humility offers it, humbly, gently, willingly." Gabriel's eyes softened as he let the words sink in. The priest turned his gaze toward the horizon again. "God does not ask you to be perfect," he continued. "He asks you to be faithful. He doesn't demand that your work be grand, only that it come from love. The gifts he gives you are not responsibilities you must carry alone. They are invitations to walk with him." The words touched Gabriel's heart with unexpected clarity. If God was inviting him, not demanding from him, then perhaps he could trust more deeply. Perhaps the light he held, his creativity, his compassion, his quiet wisdom, was not meant to be hidden out of fear of breaking it, but offered softly, just as God offered himself softly to the world. The priest rose to his feet, placing a gentle hand on Gabriel's shoulder. "Do not bury what God has planted," he said. "Let it grow, let it illuminate, even if it starts small." With that, he continued down the path, leaving Gabriel sitting alone again. But this time, his sense of solitude felt peaceful, not heavy. The priest's words echoed in his mind as he sat beneath the deepening sky. Gabriel closed his eyes and whispered a single sentence: "Lord, help me not to hide." Over the days that followed, Gabriel found himself drawn more deeply into acts of quiet service. He repaired broken toys for children in the neighborhood, leaving them anonymously at their doors. He visited the elderly woman he had helped earlier, fixing small things around her home and listening to her stories. He carved small figures with messages of hope, leaving them quietly in places where people often felt discouraged. On benches, outside the clinic, beside the fountain in the town square. He didn't do these things to be noticed. In truth, he still preferred to remain unseen, but he felt God guiding him gently, placing opportunities before him that matched the gifts he carried. One afternoon, as he walked past the church, he noticed the door was open again. This time, he stepped inside without hesitation. The sanctuary felt warm and familiar, as though welcoming him home. He knelt near the back and let his heart open fully before God. He confessed his fears again, not as chains, but as things he wished to surrender. And then, in the stillness, he felt something he hadn't felt before, the first hint of courage. Not loud, not bold, but present, real. As he prayed, he sensed words rising within him, not spoken aloud, not heard with his ears, but gently impressed upon his spirit. "The gifts I give you are not burdens, they are blessings. Use them with love, and you will walk in my peace." Gabriel opened his eyes slowly, feeling something within him settle like a stone finally finding its place. He knew he wasn't finished wrestling with fear, but he also knew he wasn't walking alone anymore. The light that God had placed in him was not his to hide. It was his to tend, to offer, to trust. 2. When he left the church, the sun was beginning to set. casting golden beams across the stone path. Gabriel paused and breathed in the beauty of it, feeling the gentle assurance that he was moving in the right direction. Tomorrow he would step forward again, not perfectly but faithfully. Gabriel awoke before dawn the next morning, stirred by something he could not quite name. The world outside was still dark, but the faintest hint of morning light hovered beneath the horizon, waiting patiently to rise. He sat at the edge of his bed for a moment, listening to the quiet of the house, the stillness of a new day, not yet touched by footsteps or worries. There was a feeling in his chest, a gentle clarity, like the quiet after a long rain, telling him that this day would matter in a different way. He didn't know why, but he sensed it. He washed his face, put on his coat, and stepped outside into the cool air. The town was silent, the streets empty, but the sky was slowly shifting. Gabriel began walking without a specific destination. His feet carried him along familiar paths, past the silent workshop, past the little bakery where the smell of bread would soon float through the air, past the old church door that had become a place of unexpected transformation. He passed them all and continued toward the edge of town, where the fields stretched beyond sight. As he walked, Gabriel reflected on the last several weeks. The small acts of kindness, the dream that continued to return, the gentle but deep conversations, and the quiet conviction forming inside him. He remembered how afraid he once felt to use his gifts, believing he had too little to offer, believing he might fail. But now he understood something he hadn't been able to see before. The value of a gift does not come from how impressive it looks, but from how faithfully it is used. A seed is small, but everything in a field begins with one. When he reached the fields, he stopped. The sky had begun to glow softly, the horizon stretching with hues of rose and amber. Gabriel closed his eyes, breathing in the cool morning air, and whispered his simple daily prayer. "Lord, guide me today. Use me however you wish." When he opened his eyes again, he noticed something unusual. A young boy stood a short distance away, holding a basket half filled with wilted flowers. The boy looked frustrated, as though he were trying to gather something that kept slipping away. Gabriel approached gently, not wanting to frighten him. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. The boy nodded shyly. "I was trying to pick flowers for my sister. She's sick, but they keep falling apart." He looked down at the crushed petals with disappointment. Gabriel felt something warm stir in his chest, an old familiar compassion that had been growing stronger these days. He knelt beside the boy and examined the flowers, noticing that most were too dry, too fragile to last. Gabriel looked at the field behind them and saw healthier blossoms growing farther in, untouched by wandering feet. "I know a place where the flowers are stronger," Gabriel said with a smile. "Would you like me to help you pick some?" The boy's face brightened and he nodded eagerly. Together they walked deeper into the field, where the blooms stood tall and vivid. Gabriel showed the boy how to choose stems with fresh strength, how to gather them gently so they wouldn't break, how to place them carefully in the basket so they wouldn't crush. As they worked, the boy began asking questions. Why was Gabriel awake so early? Why did he help strangers? Why did he speak so gently? Gabriel answered each question slowly, thoughtfully, realizing as he spoke that the boy's innocent curiosity was uncovering truths he had only recently learned himself. "Because God gave each of us something to offer," Gabriel said finally, "even if it seems small, and the world becomes softer, brighter when we share those gifts." The boy looked at Gabriel with wide eyes, as though those words planted something new inside him. Gabriel felt a deep peace in saying them, peace that came from knowing he was finally living what he had once feared. When the basket was full, the boy hugged Gabriel tightly and whispered, "Thank you." Then he ran off across the field toward his home, the flowers bouncing with each step, their colors shining in the first rays of sunrise. Gabriel watched him go, feeling something shift inside him. It wasn't pride or relief. It was a quiet recognition that he had stepped into a new kind of freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, nor freedom from fear entirely, but the freedom that comes with trusting God enough to act, even imperfectly, even humbly. For the first time, the dream he had carried for so long felt less like a mystery and more like a call he had already begun answering. The sky brightened fully as he headed back toward town. The people were beginning to stir, windows glowing softly with morning lamps, the scent of bread drifting from the bakery, the church bells preparing to ring. Gabriel felt connected to it all, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a quiet belonging that he had never fully experienced before. Later that morning, Gabriel walked into the church once again. The sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, scattering colors across the floor like fragments of a living mosaic. He knelt in the same pew as before and bowed his head. This time he didn't come with fear or confusion. He came with gratitude. "Lord," he prayed softly, "thank you for teaching me that what I have is enough when I give it with love. Thank you for reminding me that courage grows when I trust you more than my fear. Help me continue to offer what you've placed in my hands, not hiding, not hesitating, but simply giving." As he finished praying, the quiet voice that had visited him in the dream stirred once more in his heart. "Your gifts were never meant to stay hidden. They were meant to illuminate, and as you offer them, I will guide them. You are not alone." Gabriel rose to his feet and walked slowly toward the church door. When he stepped outside, the world felt different, not because it had changed, but because he had. He understood now that the life God calls each person to live is not measured by size or success, but by faithfulness. The smallest acts done with love ripple farther than we ever see. The quietest obedience often carries the greatest weight, and the gifts placed inside us, no matter how small, simple, or fragile, become powerful when entrusted back to God. As he walked home, Gabriel found himself smiling without even realizing it. The fear that once held him back had softened into something manageable, something he could walk through instead of run from. He knew there would still be days of uncertainty, days when doubt whispered again. But now he carried a deeper truth. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is offering your gifts anyway. That evening, as he closed the workshop for the day, Gabriel caught sight of the sunset spreading across the sky, its colors warm, deep, and layered like a reminder from heaven itself. And he thought of the boy, the flowers, the field, the priest's words, and the gentle voice in the dream that had guided him step by step. He whispered a final reflection to the fading light. "Lord, may every gift you give me return to you in love." It was no longer a plea, it was a promise. And in that promise, Gabriel felt the peace he had been seeking for years. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, subscribe for more spiritual reflections, and comment below with your thoughts or prayer intentions. Your presence here means more than you know.